Morning.
Good morning, everybody. This morning, I'd like to tackle the lesson 11, which covers gradients, blends, and patterns. This is the finished version of part 1, and I will show you the end of part 2. And both are kind of fun illustrations. The second one here, as you can see, has a very complex pattern that's been added. If we look at the end of part 1, we go back to it, you can see that some very complex gradients have been added to the background, to the clouds, and the hot dogs, and especially to the truck. So that's what I would like to cover today. And I think this is an important, not a term, I won't say it's one of the most important, but it is an essential lesson to learn that gradients, blends, and patterns can really enhance your illustrations quite a bit, add breadth and depth to them. So let's get started with start 1. You can see it's kind of lackluster, way that they started it. So what we want to do first is we're going to apply a gradient to the hot dog, the bun itself. Actually, I misspoke. We're going to start with a background. Trying to commit these new lessons to memory, and even though this will be the last time that I teach this class, make it a little bit easier on all of you. So here we have this brown fill and no stroke. So I just simply clicked on it and selected it. What I want to do is I want to click on the fill button, or instead I'm going to go ahead and select on the fill button here and make sure that swatches is selected. And I'm just going to go to the default black and white gradient. And that's not exactly what I want, but that's okay. It's a good place to get started. Then what I can do is I can click on the gradient panel, and that gives me the black and white gradient. You can see at the bottom here, we have to the left, we have the white, which is one end of the gradient. We have the black, which is the other end. So just to let you know that there are basically 3 types of gradient fills. There's a linear fill, which is the default. There is a radial fill, which is an option. And we also have, we click on this one. This one enables us to have freeform gradients or line gradients. And this is what enhanced the truck at the bottom that we'll do at the very end. So those are basically the 3 kinds of gradients. There's also a gradient tool over here that enables you to edit the gradient, because as you can see, the gradient is going in the wrong direction. It's the wrong colors. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to create a new color for our gradient. We're going to start at the right here. And if I double click on that little dot, come on, it brings up color picker. There we go. And I'm going to select the orange from that. So from the right end, like so. And then at the left end, I'm going to select, and they provided all the colors for us, the light blue. Whoops, I didn't want to do that. Well, I'll just leave it and I'll show you how we can change it. I'm going to double click on the left one. That brings up another color picker. Come on. I didn't want to do that. Well, if you actually create a new one, pull it off. There we go. So I will select the light blue here. Actually, I already selected light blue, so I need the orange. I'll pick that orange just for the heck of it. Okay. And now what I want to do is I want to add this new gradient to our selection. Now, if the gradient is going in the opposite, wanted to go in the opposite direction, all I have to do is click here. Notice that it reverses the direction of it. That's one thing that we can do. If I bring up, again, if I go back over here and I bring up color swatches, so I'm going to go ahead and bring up swatches as well. That's up here. I can go ahead and add the plus, and I can do that from here. There's a number of places that I can do that. I'm just going to create a brand new gradient. Okay. So that will add this. So we'll call that our background. Okay. And click OK. My computer, again, is running really slow. So here is our new gradient right here. Where did it go? Let me go back and make sure that I added it. So we should be able to do that. Let's bring this back up. And there we have it. So let's go back, and there's our gradient. Let me go back again. And with this selected, I don't want that, either one of those colors selected. I want to go back again to the fill. And I want to make sure that I've created a brand new. I don't want that. This shouldn't be a solid fill. So let me go back. Why isn't it giving me the option to save that from here? So I'm going to go back up here. And this one. No, I'm going to go ahead and pull the gradient off just so I can see this a little bit better. Again, part of my frustration at the moment is that my computer is running really sluggish. And I restarted it, and that's why I started late today by a few minutes. So I'm going to go back up here. Now it's showing, so let me go back to selection. There we go. So just by going back to the selection tool, you can see that the gradient, the fill here is a gradient. So I'm going to go ahead and add that. So it's the blue and with the orange. I'll go ahead and add that. And I'll call this one background. Okay. There we go. And it's added that gradient to our swatches. If I wish to change this in any way, I can do that from here. I can edit the gradient over here on our properties panel as well. I can click that. And when that pops up, notice it, because it is going in the wrong direction. There's a couple of different ways that we can change the direction of this. I can just simply click and drag like so and hold down the shift key, make sure that it's absolutely in the right direction. And you'll notice that we want the orange at the bottom, not at the top. So I can either click and drag in the opposite direction, like so, and hold down the shift key. And that will change the direction of it. Or I could have come back over here. Notice that it's in the right direction now. And I can either click here, and I could have done that, and that would work. Or I could put in the angle that I want the direction of the linear gradient to go, and that's at a 90-degree angle. So we created our first gradient. I'm going to go ahead and click back onto the selection tool. And the next step is we're going to go ahead and we're going to create a new gradient for our hot dog bun. And it's going to be based on the current gradient that we just created. And again, we'll use the new gradient that we create to create yet again another gradient based on that one. You can start from scratch, or you can start from the black and white as I did, or we can work with another. Now, one thing that they don't point out that you should note is that if I deselect the background and I try to click on the hot dog bun, thinking that it is an outlined shape, it only clicks the background. And that's because it's kind of a nice little thing that they did here. They decided to create the background or the bun by using a simple stroke and making it very thick and then using the endpoints to be rounded. So you need to hover with over the center of that, and I'm clicking here, and I'm going to apply a gradient instead to a stroke. Now, when you do that, and you'll notice that the gradient is here, it's vertical. I can select to that stroke. I can go ahead and I can apply the gradient that we just created. I got to make sure that stroke is selected here. And at the present time, it is, let's bring this to the fore. So that this is in the front. There we go. So I don't have the fill that instead is selected. And we have various options for ourselves. We can click here is the type of gradient. So this is we want a linear gradient, but what I want to do is, because it's applied to a stroke, I want to be able to apply it. So let's go ahead and apply a linear gradient. Okay. Now it gives me three options down here, knowing that it is a stroke. It's applying it by default with the first option down here, which is apply gradient within stroke. I can go to the next one and it says apply gradient along stroke. And actually that looks the same with this particular version. But if I select the third one, apply gradient across stroke, you can see that now it actually follows the curvature of the stroke, which is really very powerful. These are only recent additions to Illustrator. So now what I want to do is I want to take the blue one here. I want to double click. Okay. And based on the ones that they've given us, I want a nice dark orange here. So I use this as a background color here, but that was the color that I created before, but I'm just going to select a nice, nope, I don't want that orange. I want the, let's try the dark red instead. There we go. And you can see that we have, I'm going to pick for the light one instead of the light orange. I'm kind of deviating from the book a little bit. I'm going to double click here. Every time I double click, it just goes away. And it's very frustrating. But if I weren't on Zoom, this would not be happening. So it's taking memory. Okay. Oh, come on, come on. Okay. Well, then with that one selected, I'm going to come up here and I'm going to select the light color. Oh, come on. There we go. I'll select the light peach color for the top. So it provides a nice, interesting contrast here. Now, if you ever want to add colors to a gradient, all you have to do is move the cursor in between the two endpoints if you start with just simply two colors. And you'll notice that the cursor has a plus next to it. So as soon as I click, there we go. I've added a brand new stop point. And what it does is it takes the two colors that I previously selected and it creates an intermediate color between them. And I can do the same. I can double click on here. And I can, if I want, I can pick a different color. So there's a really bright yellow in between. And then what I can do is I can move these stops in between if I wish. And if I want to add another color, I can do so. At any time you want to remove a color, then just simply click on that and drag and pull it away. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to add a color again. And then what I want to do is I'm going to take, and I want this to move down just a little bit. Let's see if we can't get that. Yeah, to get a little bit better. And I can move this one over too a little bit. So that darkens the end of it a little bit. And I get a nice, really nice gradient between these. So that works really nice for us. So that's a linear gradient, but it's applied to a stroke as opposed to a closed shape. So one of the next things that they want us to do is they want us to take this little dot here, which is supposed to represent ketchup. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to apply a radial gradient to this. So I'm going to go ahead here and make sure I'm on the right page. Doing all this right. Yep, that's the next one. So we're going to do the same thing as I did before. I'm going to first, I'm going to select the shape. I'm going to apply, make sure that the fill is selected, not the stroke, because it is a closed shape. And what I want to do, let's make sure that that is in the foreground, the fill is in the foreground, and then I go ahead and I select black and white. Now, you'll note that it is a, by default, a linear gradient. So let me zoom in on this a little bit so we can see a little bit better. There we go, that should do it. And I'm going to switch from linear gradient to radial gradient. And again, this is a good instance where I want it reversed. I want it to be dark in the middle, and I want it to be white at the end. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change the colors of these, hopefully. And I'm going to change the white to a dark red. So this is the one that we're going to use for the ketchup. And then what we want to do is we want to create, I'll take and select this one here. That's the red. And then I'm going to take where the dark end is, and I want it to be the light orange. Maybe it's just, I don't remember, to be perfectly honest, which orange they want us to use. So I'll experiment. And if it keeps toggling, it gets really kind of a nuisance. But again, that has to do with trying to broadcast this for all of you, and it just opens up and it closes immediately. Come on. Yeah, it just keeps opening and closing. I apologize. There we go. Come on. Okay, let me go ahead and close the gradient. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to pick for the center the lighter color, and I don't know if it should be that light, maybe a little bit darker. I'll select that. That probably looks a little bit better. And now what we want to do is we want to edit it, because I don't want the gradient to go from the center. I want it to go from the center outward, but I want to be able to edit the gradient, and I can move and resize the gradient, especially for either linear or radial gradients. So now I'll go ahead and I'll select the gradient tool, and notice that it changes. Okay, I see a little dotted line surrounding this, and I see a repeat of what I have over here. So I can also make adjustments on the fly. What I want to do, though, is I want to take, for this particular gradient, the one I want to change the center point of this. And I'm just going to click here and I'm going to move it like so. And you can see that I can move the center of this. So the highlight, it appears to be basically a highlight. And I'm going to mess some things up. And you're also hearing the neighbors. Let's change the size of this. There we go. Yeah, I didn't want to do that. I just want to change it and I want to move it. This is giving me fits. This allows you to resize it. You can also rotate it. I should be able to move it. So let's turn this off. Try again. There we go. So now I'm clicking in here and it's working the way it's supposed to. Okay. So now I've moved the center and the size of the gradient so that it appears that I have a highlight and it looks more like a sphere rather than a simple gradient going from the center. So now I can select the move tool and I can place the first little dot of my ketchup over here, and then we can proceed to make copies of this. So we're just going to go ahead and hold down the Option key. And I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Move this over just a tad. Again, hold down the Option or Alt key if you're on the PC. Click and drag. And we're going to overlap them. And that's how we create our little stylized ketchup. Again, because my computer is working kind of sluggish. It's not behaving the way it's supposed to. All of this should go pretty quickly. So I'm going to let you guys finish that since I'm kind of frustrated with this. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to take the truck and we are going to apply a slightly different kind of gradient. Actually, I'm going to go back again. You know what I forgot to do? I'm going to take, I don't know if I copied this or added this gradient. So what I can do is I can select this shape. Let's go ahead and make sure that the stroke is selected. And I want to make sure that it is added. And I don't know that I added that. So I'm going to go ahead and with the stroke selected and I have the gradient, I'm going to make sure that the gradient is added. So I'll click, see if it's added, and we'll call it, I'm not going to call it anything. Make sure that that's properly added. So we've added that to our selection, and I have. So I can call that up at any time that I want. In the meantime, though, what I want to do is I'm going to zoom out a little bit. And also, before I forget, too, this is the lesson that I was telling you about that I had trouble loading the fonts, that they didn't exist on Adobe's website, so I couldn't activate them. So I chose different fonts for myself for the truck. You can pick whichever ones you want. It really is not important. But what I need to do is I need to select the background here of the truck body. And I'm going to go ahead under gradients here. What I want to do is I'm going to select a freeform gradient, like so. See if I can do that. Actually, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start with the linear gradient. And let me select the freeform now. No, it won't. So why is that? Oh, because I have that as a stroke. That's why I need to flip that. So let's go ahead again. Let's flip this. That's why it wouldn't allow me to do that. So let's take the stroke and I'm going to make the stroke none. I don't need stroke to be anything for the outline. And now I should be able to, with the fill selected, come in the foreground. There you go. You can't use this freeform gradient on a stroke. You can only use it on a fill. So here I have, by default, I added the linear gradient to this, but I'm going to switch to freeform. And we're going to start with dots. And again, it's really taken forever to load. I hope it doesn't crash. There we go. So we have a series of little anchor points that appear in here. There should be several. And it's taking a while to change. And if you want to add more of them, okay, we're using points right now. You just simply click wherever you want one. And then you can double click on it as we did with a linear or radial gradient to change the color. So what I'm going to do with this, we're going to start with points and we're going to switch to lines. What I want to do first, though, is I'm going to select the N one, make sure that I get a ballpark idea of the colors that they want in here. And I'm going to pull it aside so I can see, while I'm showing you what needs to be done, I'm going to kind of ballpark the images here. So there we go. So now I'm back to mine. And I'm going to come back in here and let's go ahead in here and make sure that we have the fill selected, shape. And we have freeform gradient. I'm getting that stupid little ball spinning because it's taking forever. For whatever reason, I have something else going that's eating up memory on my computer. So to add another point, you just simply click. Notice that it added a point, it added a white point. I can come down here and I can add another point. I can take this point, for example, and I'm going to hide some of these other guys here. So let's say up here in the upper right-hand corner, I want to change this to a light yellow or a light orange rather. So I'll double click on it. It's supposed to bring up the little color picker. There we go. See, it's causing problems again. And I'm double clicking on this, trying to get it up, but then it, because I have a slow connection, everything falls away. Well, I'm not doing such a hot job with this. There we go. So let's pick the light orange here, up here, the peach color. I'm going to pick up here, and I'm going to pick, for the time being, I'm going to pick a dark red. And maybe in the lower right-hand corner, we can pick a black. And then as we need, we can go ahead and we can add colors to our freeform gradient. Well, I'm going to bypass this for a moment, and I'm going to show you how you can select and add gradients to multiple shapes. Well, I guess I can select one now, so I'll go ahead and do that. It's kind of catching up with it. Actually, it should go to this dark color here. There we go. Well, let's go ahead and let's add another color down here. So I'm going to select this one. This is very frustrating for me, as I'm sure it is for you. You can also change, how by pulling on this, how much the area this affects. So I'm going to go ahead and add another point here, if I can. And I'm going to add one here. This is going to be a dark red. By default, it went to black. Click on it, I can select. And if you need to get rid of one, notice that I added another one by mistake. Just select it and hit delete. It should remove it. There we go. So I'm going to select this one. And again, part of the problem with is the lag in time here. There we go. Select this. Notice how that affects all of that. If I can go ahead now and I can take this one and I can move this over slightly. And that really shouldn't be a black. That should be a really deep, deep. Anyway, I'm just going to leave it. I'm going to come up here. This one should be down here. I'll click another one here and make this one a deep red. Yeah. We can move this about. You can move these wherever you like, and they will determine how effective, the color that it affects. That's looking pretty good. Getting closer. I'll go ahead and I can click another one here. Let's select this one, and we'll make this one a dark red. There we go. So slowly but surely, it's getting to the colors that we want. The last one that wants us to do those, let me deselect these colors. I don't want to select any of these points. And I'm adding them as I'm clicking on, and I don't want to do that. So, and you can add as many of these as you want. Just realize that it is going to take up memory as it's doing with my computer. So let's remove that. And let's move these about. And I have a pretty close blend to what they have done. Actually, this one should be a lighter, more dominant orange in the middle. So I'll go ahead and double click on that. And I'm getting it close. Close enough for government work right now, since this is causing me fits. Now what I can do is I can switch to lines. And this is how lines work. And I don't know that I'll be able to finish it for you because I'm just having so many problems. What you do is you click, and then you click, and it creates a little arc. And you can move these points wherever you want. So notice that I have 3 white points here. I can click on this one and I can move it in any direction that I want. So I'll switch this one to kind of a solid orange. Let's click on this one and let's make this one lighter orange. Peach color. Actually, no, let's make it red. The book tells you which colors are supposed to be, but I'm just kind of freeforming it here. I'm going to leave this as is, done enough. What I want you to do, show you how to do now is how to select multiple objects and apply gradients across them. So I'm going to select this object with a selection tool. If I can get that going here. So I got this one selected. Come on. There we go. And I'm going to select this window by holding down the Shift key. And I'm going to select this window by holding down the Shift key. I want to apply a gradient across all of them. So to do that, I'm going to go back up to my swatch panel. And I'm going to select the first one that I created. And you'll notice it applies an individual gradient across all of them. I don't want that. I just want to be able to have it span all 3 objects. So now what I need to do is I need to select the gradient tool and I need to click and drag vertically about where I want the gradient to start, where I want it to end. You can see it's going in the opposite direction that I wanted it to go. So I'm going to go ahead and click and drag in the opposite direction, hold down the Shift key to constrain the direction, and now it's going in the right direction. So there you have it. My example of the freeform gradient looks horrible because my computer is working so poorly. You can also apply or change opacity to gradients. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to select the cloud, and I'm not going to do that. You can make the copies of the cloud yourself. So I will select the cloud, and I'm going to the stroke, I'm going to select none, because we don't need that. We just needed it for visibility, and I'm going to apply a linear gradient to it. Whoops, I didn't want to do that. I need to make sure that it is the fill to which I apply the gradient. There we go. And now using the gradient tool, I'm going to click and drag diagonally like so. I want it to be, we can flip the direction of that, just like so. And let me go ahead and flip the direction of it so that it's going that way. I'm going to take the white. Actually, I'll start with the black and double click on it. Hopefully get the gradient, the color up here. I want the light blue selected so that it matches what I have up here. The one down at the bottom, the color at the bottom of our gradient, what I want it to be is a light green that they provided for us. It's this one right here. And I don't want it to be light across the whole part of it. So I'm going to change the opacity of this one and make it 0. And you'll notice that it's a slight, or maybe 90% or 80%. Let's do that. No, I didn't want to change the location. I wanted the location to be 100%. It was the opacity that I needed to change. Location 100%. There we go. The opacity I'm going to change to maybe 30%. That end. Now you can see I can adjust this as needed to create my gradient width. Let's move this one down too. Pull this down a little bit. Actually, this one was supposed to be white, I believe. There we go. So this one was supposed to remain white. My mistake. That was for our cloud. And then it gradually goes into the green. So this one is supposed to be 0%. So I'll make it 0. I had them turned around. There we go. So now I can fiddle with the direction of these and the length of my gradient, and we can accordingly just simply make copies of it. So it blends into the background quite nicely. This is kind of an old school way of blending colors from one shape to another. That's one way of doing it. Another thing that we're going to do now is we're going to switch to blends. So I'm going to switch over here and I'm going to show you how to do it. I'm not going to put them into place, but I will show you how to do it. So let's go ahead and do it. So that, because my computer is working so poorly. So what I want to do is I want to blend this star to this star. There are a variety of ways that you can do that. To do that, you need to use the blend tool right here. So I'm going to make sure that I deselect the shape that I had for the cloud. Select the blend tool right here. It's below the eyedropper tool. And I need to click on the top of the star on the red. And I'm going to click on the top of the star here in the large one. And you can see it doesn't look like much, but this is a smooth blend. If I want it to be in separate steps, I double click on the blend tool. One. Oh, there we go. It's popped up and I didn't see it. So instead of smooth color, we're going to do it in specified steps. And you can see that by default, it did 145 steps. Well, what if I select 6 steps here and look at the preview and see what it looks like? Now it's blending these shapes and it's kind of morphing from one to the other. And that's what I want. I'm going to go ahead and just use 6 because it seems to be working for me. The other thing that you can do is that by default, it creates and links these two using a Bezier curve, but it by default makes a straight line. What I want to do is switch, and I'm going to use under the pen tool, I'm going to use the anchor point tool. And I'm going to shift, and I'm going to click on this anchor point and pull it up. And you can see that it's changing the direction. And it's as if these stars were connected on a, there we go, connected on a clothesline. So as you move that, the stars will, adhere to the Bezier stroke. And you can do it either in a smooth or in a specified steps. This is what they wanted with specified steps, and we're going to move it over onto the truck. But the next one, if you want, and this is kind of an old school way of blending, is we're going to take these two shapes and we're going to do a smooth blend between these two to create a more three-dimensional appearance. To do that, again, we use the blend tool again. And I click, and what you want to do is you want to click on like points. If I click on this top point and then I click on the bottom point, let's see what happens. Let me undo that. Let's try again. I'm going to, again, select the blend tool. And let's try from the top point to the top point, which is what you should do. Notice that it created a nice blend between the two. So I got a nice smooth contour shape from here. Now, if you do that with the opposite points, so let me go back again. What if I were to select the blend tool and select the top point here, and then select another point over here? It's still working. Let me undo a couple of these. And I'm going to go back a few steps. So what if I were to select the top point here, and I select the bottom point over here? Notice how it twists and turns. So you have to pick like point with like point for the blend to work properly. So if you notice a twisting action occurring, so instead of smooth steps, we'll go back to specified steps so you can see what's going on here. And I'll go back to 6 again. Okay. Notice how it's twisting and turning. That's not what you want. So select like point with like point to get the desired result. So I'm going to undo a few steps. And I'm going to try it again. I'm going to go top point to top point. And then I'll double click on the blend tool. And instead of smooth blend, I'll switch back to specified steps, switch to maybe 5, 6 steps. And I get the desired result. Okay, so that's it for gradients and blends and all the different kinds of gradients and applying gradients to a stroke as opposed to a fill, working with linear gradients and radial gradients, freeform gradients, either with points or with a path. And again, if my computer were working a little bit better, we could get a better appearance here. But you get the idea that you can add little spots of color here, there, and everywhere. And you can control the size and the placement, and it's easy to delete and to add spots of color. This works really, really nice when it's working properly. Also, how to take multiple objects and apply a gradient to all of them. And I did that with the windows and the truck. So we're going to leave gradients and blends, and we're going to work with patterns now. So let's look at the N2 to see what it's supposed to look like. Come on. There we go. So now we have a truck. And what we're doing, you'll notice we have famous Franks here. It's where we've added this collection of images that actually is a pattern. It doesn't appear to be, but it is. Now, what they started with, so let me close the gradient right now since we don't need gradients. So what they have done is they've taken a collection of shapes. You cannot use gradients inside pattern. There's a few other things that you can't use either, but these are basic shapes. So you can use, and you can't use text. So if we were to double click inside this group, let me go inside the group itself. Let's go to group selection tool. and select inside Frank's and the type. Notice that these have been converted to outlines. So you cannot use editable text. You cannot use gradients inside patterns. Probably a few other things that I'm forgetting about. But with the selection tool, to turn this into a pattern, all I have to do is simply select it and drag it into my, my swatch panel. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to start to, this is what we have here. It's taken a while to open it. So I need to first turn this into a pattern. And I'm going to click and drag it inside like so. And it's doing its thing here. So all of these have been grouped together, and you'll notice that it turned it into a pattern. So now all I have to do is, as soon as this finishes its thing here, is select the shape that I want to apply the pattern to. And then I click on the pattern that I just created. And there you go. Now, what they want us to do is to change the size of the pattern and its properties. So to do that, you need to double click on the pattern itself. And it brings up the pattern editing tool. So what we can do is we can change the placement of this. And here's this little dialog box that pops up here. So we can change the width and the height relative to one another. There's also different types of grids from which to choose. So I can rename the pattern. So I can call this for if I want, famous Frank's pattern. And right now it's set to a strict grid, but if I click and I hold down on this little arrow here, it will show me the other variations that I have available to me of how to, I can do it in a brick mode where they're kind of staggered. I can do it by column. You can size tile to art if you wish. I'm going to go ahead and just for the heck of it, just to show you here, I'm going to make sure that the height and the width are linked to one another. Just to show you what happens when I change the size of this a little bit. And I'm going to change this to 2 inches. Then make that a little bit smaller. And notice how it significantly changed the size of the pattern. Okay. Now what I need to do is I have to probably increase the size of the, make sure that it stretches to the size of the artwork if I do that. Okay, I'll turn that off. And let's go back to its original size. So I'm going to, just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to leave this alone. You can also determine how many copies you want. Right now it's set to 5 by 5. I'm just going to reduce it so it's a little bit easier to see. Okay. If you need to take the artwork itself and you want to rotate it, you could do that. You can do a variety of things with this to create your custom pattern. Also to let you know, let's get out of this. So I'm going to go ahead and you can either save a copy or you can just say done. I'm just going to say done. Because the one that they want us to do, if I look at this, the finish for number 2, it's a little bit smaller, but you'll get the basic idea for that. Okay. There we go. So it's a little bit smaller and they've changed, how it's organized just a little bit. So what I want to do next, though, is, and this is, I think, a very important feature to Illustrator, is that I can add multiple properties to an individual shape. Right now, I've assigned a pattern fill to my object, but what I want that yellow orange or that orange background added to it. So this is what we need to do. I'm going to go back to my start for number 2 here. Well, it automatically added that yellow background. And that's not necessarily what I wanted to do. So if we wanted to change the color of the background, this is what you would do. You go to Window, and you need to bring up the Appearance panel. And this is where you're allowed to create multiple strokes and multiple fills. If I look at the fill here, okay, we can see that it is a gradient fill. If I, let me go ahead and select the shape itself, make sure that that's showing up. We only have one fill here. Why that is showing up, I don't know. So I have one fill. If I want to add another fill to this, I can go ahead and do that. Let me back out of this for a minute. I'm going to turn this gradient fill off. Okay, what if I want a different color for that background? Okay, well, I can do that. I can go ahead here and I'm going to add another fill to this. They already added it for us, but let's go ahead here and I'm going to change the fill. Let's say I want a pink or a yellow, or I want to pick, just for contrast, the green fill here and see what it does. Not a thing. So let's make sure I have everything selected that's supposed to be selected. This. And showing the green fill. Let me bring up my Appearance panel again. They might have multiple shapes, and I'm not aware of that. They do. How dare they? So I'm going to select, I'm going to go ahead and undo this. So this is deconstructing what they did. I need to make sure that that's a green fill, and why that's not showing up, I don't know. But I'm going to go ahead here and I'm going to switch to layers. And here's the truck color underneath. Now, what they have failed to show you is, let's look at where it says truck pattern here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make sure that my targeted green fill shows up. So I'm going to go ahead and select just the green fill. And I don't know why it's not showing up. It should. Oh, I know why. Because it's filling over here. It's taking that pattern shape that I thought I had deselected, and it's filling the wrong thing. So let me undo a few steps. Let's go back and select the shape that I want. It says pattern fill. And let's go back here and let's see if I can go to the properties panel. Fill that. So that's working there for the pattern that we wanted to create. But let's go back to the fill itself. And I don't know why it's still not truck parts, wheels. So why isn't that filling? Let's go back again, select it, pick a different color. No, it's not working. So I might have the wrong one selected. So let me move it to the side and see what's going on here. Okay. Well, let's pick the truck color here. I'm going to turn off the truck pattern one since I'm having problems with it. I'm going to select the truck background color. And I'm going to pick a different color for that. So let's see if I can't do that since I goofed up the other one. So I'm going to bring up the swatch panel, make sure that fill is selected, and let's select for that, again, that green that I was talking about. There we go. So that one's filling. I want to apply the pattern to that. So what I can do is I can select the pattern as well. But notice that the background is removed. That's not what I want. What I want to do is I want to have both a background and a fill, and I don't want to have to use two separate shapes like what they did. So I'm going to go to Windows and bring up Appearance. And this is how you add multiple appearances. You'll notice that we have a fill that's been added and no stroke. Opacity by default for the shape is 100%. What I'm going to do is select the fill and I'm going to duplicate it. It will automatically apply that to the top. I want my background color to be added to the bottom. So instead of the gradient or the pattern fill, I'm going to click here and I will select that orange background we were talking about. So it will be applied to one, in fact, one shape. So that's how you add multiple fills to a single shape. You need to use the appearance panel to do that. What they also did too is that by taking this shape, we have a dark background. They wanted to add a pattern on top of that, a mezzotint. So they did something very similar to that. We took the fill, we selected it with the appearance panel, we duplicated it. Okay, and on the top one, I'm going to click here, and there should be, they've already added some patterns for us. I want the mezzotint. There we go. So here's the mezzotint. It's been added to it. And I can change and edit the colors of that. I can, in their final version, it doesn't look like they have anything, but we can go back and we can edit those. And we can edit the colors. Let's see what this one is. No, yeah, they want the mezzotint. Triple mezzotint. So there we go. So that's been added. If I turn off the background color now, this fill, you can see that that's been added. So what I want to do is I can change the fill color here for the mezzotint. Let's see if I can do that. I can change, I'd have to go back and edit this. So we'd have to go back to the pattern again. I'd have to double click on that mezzotint in order to edit the pattern. Now you can see that it's a black. Let's change that to maybe a light yellow or a light orange, just for the heck of it. No, it's not working for me. So I'm going to get back out of there. And I'm just going to leave that as is, just to show you how you can add other patterns for texture and that sort of thing. So that's it today. I apologize for the clunkiness of today's demonstration. My computer is very sluggish, and it's making it difficult for me to properly demonstrate for you. So let's switch this again. I'm going to do this kind of like, let's overlap that a little bit. Let's see if that works a little bit. Let's change this to 3. See if that works a little bit better. So it's a little bit tighter. And I'll go ahead and we'll just get out of that edit mode, and that will work for us. Now, another way that you can change, one more thing before I leave today. One more thing that we can do, if you want to change the size of patterns, you can use the scale tool. So I can select that. I can select the shape. I can double click on the scale, and it will give me options here. I can scale corners. I can scale strokes and effects. And when I transform the objects, do I want to transform patterns? So what I want to do is I don't want to scale strokes and effects. I don't want to transform the object. I only want to transform the pattern. So what if I want the pattern to be 50% of this size? If I hit 50%, like so, and we'll turn preview on and off. Maybe I selected the wrong one, and I probably did. So let's select, oops. Let's select this one. And let's go ahead and double click again and make sure that it's working. On scale tool. Let's go ahead and turn preview on and off. And in order to make sure that I'm selecting the right one, I'm going to have to go to layers since they duplicated that. Yeah, we have the truck background selected. So with it selected, again, I should be able to come back in with the scale tool, uniform scaling. I don't want transform object. I only want patterns. Let's really shrink it down. Let's use 25%. And preview. It's not working for me, but I don't know why. Maybe it's taking time to catch up, but that's what it's supposed to do. So there you have it. All right. Okie doke. Well, I am done for today. It's taken me a lot longer than I anticipated. It was a lot more difficult with my sluggish computer. So I'm going to call it a day. And if you have questions, please let me know. You should be able to complete this assignment much easier than my demonstration today. So that's it. I'm going to say goodbye. Pause my recording.